And we are live. Okay, we are here. We have made it to another week of chat with the aunties, and we have been rejoined by our lovely hostess with the mostest, Miss Malaika Salam, aka Purple Hair and Converse. We are so happy to be together again, y'all. Last week was rough, um, but we made it through. So it's me, Giovanni, aka the Lux Libra, and I'm excited to be with you all once again as we continue this exploration of honesty, choices, and of course, what we've been talking about all along: self care, vulnerability, and all that good stuff. So, Malika, you want to reintroduce yourself?
Hey y'all, hey, Malaika Salam, Purple Hair Converse, your global neighborhood hope dealer out here pushing positivity consistently because hope is dope. So, I don't know where to put my eyeballs because I'm being a cheer mom and a mom taxi. So, real life is happening, so I'm doing this in real time. And I have one of those little things that you hook up to your pop socket so that you can like put it in the car or whatever. Um, so I'm like taxi cab confessions right now. Like I'm just like, where do I focus my eyeballs? Like up
At the
there,
camera, at the
like
camera.
it's crazy. But I'm here. I am here, and I'm excited to be here. So, hey.
Hey, so we are so happy to have you. Just one more quick tech thing. You're sounding a little bit muffled, so I don't know if your speaker is covered or if your mic is covered, but you're just a little bit muffled with your sound.
Yeah, I'm trying to hook up the sound right now because it's the same way on the other end. Like the in call volume is up, but it's just not coming through very well. So
Okay.
let's see if we can make that happen.
Yes, we'll work it on out. We'll work it on out.
Right.
Um, so are you sipping on any tea today, Mom Taxi Duty?
Yes, I'm traveling, so right now it's sweet tea. And y'all just forgive me as I continue to work out the kinks here.
Okay, sound got better. Whatever you did, the sound did get clearer.
Okay. So yeah, I am just had some sweet tea because that's what that's what you have when you're on the go. But I think it gave me a cavity because I didn't make it.
Oh, it
I
was some
got it from
diabetes sweet
somewhere.
tea.
Right. And sipping sweet tea in the South, you don't know how sweet it's gonna be until you get it. So it was really sweet.
Well, I'm glad you were able to get it because, as we know, not everybody can do sweet tea. It does require a certain skill and a certain amount of Southern capabilities. So,
I believe that tea was made by a lady named Esther. It could have possibly been made by somebody named Esther.
okay, so your sound was really good. Whatever you just did, that was great sound.
I fixed it. I used all the gadgets and gadgets that I have available to me, and I was like, we're going to make this work.
I love
I would like to also say that this episode of Chat with the Aunties is sponsored by Mercury and Gatorade.
Yeah.
We started early. We set our time. We started at the time. I called you. Hey, production notes. I'm out. How do we do this? And we started well before 5 o'clock.
We really did.
But it was 5:15 before we got on. So I'm blaming it on Mercury retrograde because that's what everybody blames stuff on when it's Mercury retrograde. The rest of the time would just be us out here messing up.
Totally okay with that. Totally okay with that.
So what type of tea are you sipping on, Auntie?
So I am actually being a real tea master here. So I have blended a little bit of the Yogi lavender honey tea with some lavender lemon lane by Celestial Seasonings.
Okay, you're out here doing tea alchemy. I love it. I love
I see what you did there.
Yeah, because that lavender honey tea from Yogi is really heavy and thick with the lavender. And so I was like, oh, lighten it up just a little bit with the lemon from the lavender lemon lane, because it is so lemony. It's more lemon than lavender. So I was like, oh, this should be a good balance of each other.
Yeah, I've done that mix before. The honey doesn't come through a lot, which I like. I was actually just having a conversation about that earlier. Because, I'm a savory person. I don't necessarily like sweet things.
Mm-hmm.
And even when I make tea and stuff, I always ask, even if I go out somewhere, for medium sweetness. Like, I don't like it very sweet. And especially with an herbal tea, like lavender, I love lavender. I really want the lavender to come through. And the sweetness is just an enhancement. Like, it shouldn't be overly sweet.
Mm-hmm.
But with that lavender lemon lane, you're right. We talked about this before. The lavender lemonade tea that I got from Zena's is very lavender lemonade. And I think they use something different. I think they use lemon verbena in that one, where a lot of other teas use a little bit of lemon zest and usually lemongrass for the flavoring. And so that one is really balanced. But with the honey lavender, it is very strong in lavender. The honey is just a little bit of sweetness, but I can see how adding the lavender lemon lane would balance that out, because that lemon is a little bit stronger on the other side and it adds the brightness. Mm-hmm. So it balances those flavors. So you have something that's not too citrusy or too herbal with just a little bit of sweetness to kind of, bloom the flavors.
Yes, exactly.
We're real tea masters around here.
Exactly. So next up, your Aunties teas coming through, right?
Right.
So
I mean, if we're gonna sip it and share it and spill it, we gotta be able to talk about it. We don't be playing, y'all. We do this tea thing.
Yeah, we are tea connoisseurs. We are.
Right. What the kids say? It's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle. It is definitely a lifestyle. Yeah, I'm about that tea life. I'm about that tea life. So, yeah.
Fact. Yeah, I knew for a fact that I had crossed over into real. I am a tea lover. I like coffee, and I've always liked coffee, but I am not a coffee connoisseur. I don't know how to go places. And, whenever I order, it's always a joke. It's like, can I get a coffee with some sugar and some cream? That's it. I don't know about half fat, decaf, double whip. I don't know about that. I never got enough into it. And so I realized with the teas that, when I got into tea, I started studying it. I wanted to know everything about the teas and how you steep them. And, what are true teas versus herbal teas? Because there's only one tea. There's only one thing that is an actual tea leaf.
Right.
Everything else is either a combination or an herbal tea, which means that it's either mixed with that original tea leaf or it's its own herb, and then you steep them. The leaves are plants from a particular tree. Mm-hmm. So, again, I'm, fascinated by tea. And I saw something. Moo Mansion posted something about drinking tea. So she gets her tea from Honey and Sage, which, we love them. Those are, all of those folks are bae, right?
Yes.
Right. So Moo and the Honey and Sage group, they have formed a relationship, and she gets her tea from them. And she was saying how she realized that she's a tea lover, not a coffee lover. And I was like, talk more about the tea. Let's really have that conversation, because I'm always here for tea conversations. And I realized that the other part of it is there's so many connections and analogies that resonate with me for tea. I remember being in church and working on a sermon. Imagine that, y'all. I was in the ministry working on a sermon about tea and how we are so much like tea in that a lot of our best qualities are on the inside, and we don't feel them until we're in some hot water, and all of that is extracted from us. All of that is cooled out. So I think, tea just works on so many levels.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And that analogy, I think about some of the experiences that you and I both have had in life in general, and how we have really been able to rise to the occasion. And that was because we were in the hot water, right? When we were comfortable, when we were in our little bags, we were probably hiding and chilling and just being like, oh, I'm over here in the bag and I'm good. But when the hot water hit, when the situations came up, when things fell through, when we really had to step up and do things and honor things and bring out all of our best, that's when we really showed up and showed out.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. You can look at the box and say, oh, this is what it is. You can even open it up and smell it and say, oh, yeah, that's definitely what it is. But if you really want to know what it is, wait till it hits the hot water. Wait till it's been steeped.
Wait till,
because that's the other thing, right? It has to be the right temperature.
has to be steeped for the right amount of time, because if you don't steep it long enough, you're not going to get all the benefits. And if you steep it too long, you kill everything off.
Mm-hmm.
You make it bitter. So again, analogies for life. And here we are chatting with the aunties.
Here we are, right on time. So I will not complain. I will not complain at all about the time it took us to arrive here, because we are, as always, right where we're supposed to be, right when we're supposed to be there. So gratitude for that.
Absolutely.
So yeah, let's get into this tea. So last week we we got into honesty and our choices. We reviewed what we show ourselves, and with honesty and how that guides our character, and really started getting into those foundational pieces that we talked about week before last. So one of the things that you and I left off in our last discussion was about honesty, and how accountability and patience were kind of at the root of being able to be honest, of being able to really own our stuff, whatever it is, and regardless as to what it is. And so getting from that place of accountability, being able to own our stuff and show up and claim it and know what it is, acknowledge it, the patience that we develop from that process, that's a process that requires our patience. And at the same time that it requires our patience, it teaches us more and more patience. So we're looking at, and what I got from my perspective was honesty being the foundation for everything else. Honesty, building that foundation through patience, building that foundation through accountability, and it really just being a baseline for how and what we can do in other areas of our life. So I keep looking away because I'm looking at my notes. And so, the question was, what do we show ourselves? And then how does that guide our choices? Because remember, when we think about being honest, we then think about being honest with others, but also being honest with ourselves, and what that looks like, and how being honest with ourselves can then guide our choices out in the world, right? Once we're honest with ourselves, we can see our past choices and see the decisions that we've made, but also it lets us be honest enough to make future choices that will really serve us, really serve what we're going for, really serve what we truly desire. So I just wanted to get into that discussion about honesty and choices.
So one of the lessons that I have learned this summer in traveling and spending time with family, big things, the small things, working, I have really circled back around to this place of figuring out what is true for me now.
Mm-hmm.
And that is an exercise in being honest with myself. So we had this conversation a while back, and I've probably said this before on here. So I worked security this summer, and I say work. I'm still on that assignment, but that assignment is definitely coming to an end, because what is true for me is that it's very much started as an experiment. It was kind of like, oh, okay, so school is out. I need something to do for the summer. This is an easy thing for me to get into. Let me try this out and see what it's like. So most of my family did not think that I was going to last past the first day or the first week, because they were just like, it's intense peopling. It's outside in the heat. She's going to have to be, on her feet for hours at a time, on top of all of those other factors. And we just don't think that, like, she's going to want to do it. Oh, and in a uniform and with certain time constraints. Okay? So all of those things.
No.
Right. So I go in the first day, and the first day I was like, oh, this is like not working out. Like, they're not running things well, but I don't want to be a supervisor. And I knew in that moment that I was going to be a supervisor. I knew in that moment that the only way that I could do this job was from a position where I could kind of bring some balance between management and the team, because there was like no consistency or whatever. And that's what I've been able to do over the summer. And now that I've done it, it's kind of run its course. But while it was happening, we had a conversation about, what if I want to be a security guard? Like, what if that's the thing that I want to do?
Mm-hmm.
Not what if I want to run a security company? What if I want to go into security? What if I want to be an account manager? There was nothing higher. There was no bigger goal than that. It was, I'm going to do security.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do security for Major League Baseball, which has been interesting because I've seen a lot of, baseball games, like New York Yankees games and stuff like that. And it's like, that's cool. I've done a lot of peopling with a lot of different personalities, and it was good. And it served its purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And it taught me some things about myself. One, I lasted longer than a day. I've been doing this since May. So I did my whole summer being a security supervisor. I was top flight of the world, Craig, for a whole summer. I was in charge of security teams. And, I found out that I am probably medium maintenance. Like, I'm definitely not low maintenance. I need some things, but I'm also not high maintenance. So I was able to, be in this uncomfortable environment and do the work. But like, I've done that now. It's over.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a choice. And the choice came from me being honest with myself that while this is not a career for me, that this is a thing that I could do, that I could work security.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to do anything else, that there was no greater goal, that there was not something that I was pressing towards, that there was no higher mark or higher calling. I just worked security for a baseball team. That was it. And I was fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we first started having this conversation about choices, that was one of the things that we talked about. Like, what if I don't want to be a principal? What if I don't want to be an administrator? What if I just wanted to, and I don't want to say just, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That always diminishes it. But what if I want to be a teacher? What if that is it? That is my goal. That is my truth, and that is my choice. I want to teach.
Mm-hmm.
Because so much of what we've been taught is, well, once you've done this, then you have to do that. And we don't explore the truth of it for ourselves. We don't explore whether that is authentic to who we are and what we want to do. We just think that that's the way that it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I graduated high school. I got a diploma, so now I go to college.
Mm-hmm.
And then I, get a degree in college, and then I go and get a job somewhere doing this thing that I got the degree for. But what if that's not really it?
Yeah.
So I haven't made a choice.
Yeah. So the thing that comes up for me around that is thinking about what influences our choices. And so when I think about what influences our choices, because when you and I had that conversation, the other part of that conversation is all of the people who have supported us on that journey to do that thing, right? So there were maybe people who were invested in, I'll speak from my own experience, people who literally invested in me in that they gave me money to go to school. There were people who had invested in me as a part of the work that they did, teachers, educators, community members, church members. There were people who invested in me in just, spending time tutoring me on certain subjects or helping me, get better with a skill set. And then later in my educational experiences, there were people who invested in me by supporting me with childcare or resources to make sure I had childcare, transportation, all those kinds of things. And I can't think of any other reason outside of our own desire and the reality that we live in a capitalist economy. People want a return on their investment. They want to know that something that they judge as good was the result of the investment that they made. And so the investment is never an investment of, I did a good thing because I helped this person do the thing they wanted to do right now. In a capitalist sense, it's all about that long-term return on investment. Well, I helped you get through school, so now you have a good career, and you should do either one, pay it forward by helping younger family members or cousins or things like that, or two, pay it forward by being a person that I can be quote unquote proud of, so that I can go around and brag to everybody about how I helped you do this thing, and now I'm proud of you for doing that thing. So when I think about it, like I really can't get out of a really capitalistic mindset about it, because to me, that's what a lot of it is. And then again, that work is attached to the ideals of capitalism, right? The ideals of capitalism say, when you get a good education, you should get a good job. And a good job is always determined by the amount of money that you make at that job. Nobody asks if it's a job you're happy with. Nobody asks if it's a job that's good for your mental health. Nobody asks if it's a job that you enjoy. The question that people want to know is, how much money do you make there? And so there's an inherent conflict of values there, right? You make a choice of what feels good to you, what works well for you, et cetera. But other people want you to also make a choice about what feels good to them and what is quote unquote impressive or good enough for them.
Right. So I'm transitioning right now.
Mm-hmm.
So you probably can't see me, but you can hear me.
We see the Purple Hair Converse logo.
Okay. So in regards to that, I really want to get back to this idea of being honest and how it influences our choices, because pretty much everything that you just said indicates that honesty is really kind of taken away from us early. It's usurped by these relationships, right? Absolutely. So even when we think about being honest, one of the first things that we think about is not being honest with ourselves, but being honest with other people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have to tell somebody, honestly, I don't want to do XYZ thing that you were expecting me to do, that you were expecting as a return on your investment. For example, parents. I don't want to do 4 years of high school. I don't think that that's my calling. Like I don't feel like I'm going to make it. So, hey, parents who've supported me all of this time and who've kind of been telling me, what the expectation is of what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it, that doesn't really work for me. And I'm just now figuring that out. So I just want to let you know that that's not a thing that I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's usually not met with, oh, thank you for being honest with us.
No.
That's usually met with a lot of resistance, a lot of pushback. And it doesn't matter if that's what aligns with who you are and what feels right to you, right? So very early, we are given this idea that we don't matter. Like you know what I'm saying? Like our human needs matter. They got to feed us and clothe us. And, they will remind us periodically that they are feeding us and clothing us and putting a roof over our heads, and therefore we are expected to comply in some way. But the reality is, when we start to go up that hierarchy of needs, what makes us happy, what makes us tick, what aligns with us is not really the thing that's being considered.
No, not at all.
So when we talk about honesty, a lot of times it starts from the I need to be honest with you, and not I need to be honest with me, and then we kind of have to, back into it. Well, I'm being honest with you. Why am I being honest with you? Because what is my truth? What is real for me?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, when I think about all of these things that we're kind of, called to be and do in ways that we're expected to move in the world, a lot of that is dictated by, what the return on investment is, what I've done for you. And so, therefore, these are my expectations.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. And that's the other part of it, right? Other people's expectations, other people's judgments, and other people's approval. And I think all three of those go together. And very early on, we learned that it's not okay to be honest. When I started this series, that was the key statement that early on we learned. We learned very early that it's not okay to be honest. We learned very early that our honesty, somehow, we don't really know how, but somehow has the power to hurt someone else.
Right.
Or embarrass them or shame them, or make them quote unquote look bad in some
Mm-hmm.
sort of way. And so, when I started that whole, series about, asking this question about honesty in vulnerability, the other side of that was asking this question about honesty in these cases of saying, hey, when did you first learn to not be honest? When did you first find out that it wasn't okay for you to be honest? And like I said, most of us learn really early that we can't be honest, that it's not socially acceptable, that will hurt someone's feeling, that someone would think we weren't good enough, or that we would be bad somehow, that we would in some way be wrong or violate another human being with our honesty or with our truth.
Right. So I've made the transition. Hopefully this is working well. Um, yeah, so that's a huge piece to this honesty thing. We don't, so again, we're having to kind of back into it. So one, accepting that part of our choices that have been made may not have been made of our own volition. They've been made as a result of this programming that says, this is what you're supposed to do. This is the timeline in which I expect it to be done. This is the expectation, and there are consequences for you not meeting this expectation. Because if you embarrass me, if I am ashamed of you, then I am going to withdraw something, right? I'm going to withdraw my support in some way because you have to now be punished for what I'm feeling as a result of the expectations that I had, even though we never discussed this, even though we never entered into any agreement or contract.
Exactly.
This is what this it was a tacit agreement, right?
Exactly. That's
As
what
a
I was
parent,
saying. Yeah. Nobody, it's an agreement that you never agreed to, right?
right,
It's an agreement that you never got to list any of the terms of.
right.
And, you never even publicly said, yes, I'm agreeing to this. It was just like, oh, well, these people they keep feeding me and clothing me and giving me a place to stay. So I suppose I should respond to them in a certain way
Right.
to keep those things.
Well, what it makes me think of is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody ever really explains to us in elementary school, okay, so, this is the Pledge of Allegiance. This is what it means. When you do this, you are now entering an agreement with this country that this is what you stand for. They just, shuttle you into a classroom and then expect you to just fall in line and start repeating things and not asking any questions. And this is kind of the pattern of life. So again, is that allegiance true for you? Are you being honest in swearing your allegiance to these United States? One, when you have no data, so you really aren't even able to make an informed decision or an educated decision. And then two, like you're not even of the age of consent, right? So how do you enter into a contract when you literally according to that same, constitution, have no rights to be in a contract. Like not able to make
So,
that decision.
yeah, right. So we call that indoctrination, right? You have this information. You're not necessarily able to do anything as far as acting on it, but you have it and you hold it dear, right? And you hold it dear because you've done it every day, K through 12, every morning within the first 5 minutes of getting to school to say, I haven't said the pledge in over 20 years, but as soon as you said the Pledge of Allegiance, the entire script came up in my mind because I was indoctrinated at a very early age. One, with the assumption that this country was for me, for people that looked like me, and that I should have some level of gratitude or commitment or connection or loyalty to it. And that's, before we all read, Lies My Teacher Told Me, or before we all, get those books with the red, black, and green flag on it from the library, or,
Right.
And of course, there's always, a faction of us that get that education very early on at home, but in mass, most people do not learn about the government, the history, the violence, and the actions that this country has taken. We just learn to say the pledge, and everybody applauds us for memorizing this long script. And it's great. We do it every morning with our friends, and then we get to the playground and make parody songs about it, and it's just a part of the school day.
So this is part of our habituation. Part of our habituation is learning how not to be honest with ourselves, because that is taken away from us. So part of the work that we're doing here is literally figuring out, what the hell does that look like? Maybe I don't like cheese. Maybe I just think I like cheese because I was fed cheese and I was told that cheese is a good thing. I'm lying. I love cheese, but I'm just, as an example, I don't want anybody to be confused by that statement. I love cheeses. Nobody had to convince me of that. I think they tried to convince me otherwise, and I was like, no, this one thing I know to be true. I like cheese. Like, you're not going to talk me out of that. But like, there's so many things that we've been exposed to, and so many things that, we've been given and we've just been told this is the way that it is. And not, really, we weren't, we just weren't taught to be honest early. Even I think about how we relate to family members, right? We're forced into these relationships of, that's your cousin, be nice, or that's your aunt or your uncle, and you need to speak and give them hugs. And so, all of those things. And I'm just thinking none of those things were about honesty. None of those things were about, what do you like? What works for you? What feels good for you? And it's almost like we don't really start having those conversations until it's dealing with some type of violation, right?
Yeah, we're taught, you're going to make your auntie sad if you don't hug her, or you're going to be rude, which I don't allow as a parent. I don't allow you to be rude, and you'll be rude if you don't hug this relative, or you get called names, right? I mean, I cannot count the number of times, both for myself and my children, that we got called stuck up, touch me nots, antisocial, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, because we were not willing to immediately connect and be open to a person that was new to our environment or atmosphere.
So then that dishonesty is reinforced with shame and embarrassment, right? So even when you are honest, honesty is not embraced, which just takes us to a whole nother level of why it's so hard for us to get to the point of being honest with ourselves, because none of this has conditioned us or prepared us for that.
And often that's met with violence, right? If we are honest, we're met with violence.
Yeah.
You know, there's some things that you so and violence being at the extreme end of the shame and embarrassment, right? You are shamed, you know, someone says something to you to shame you, or you are publicly shamed, which is then embarrassing. And then at the furthest extent of that, you know, it can even be met with violence, you know, just
Well, and I want to make a distinction there, because this is something that I've been really considering lately, is making the distinction when we say violence,
physical versus mental.
physical.
Social.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So physical is the end of the spectrum, but it's very much a gradient.
Mm-hmm.
Very much goes from how we, how we talk. And so shame talk is not necessarily violent to begin with. It can seem very harmless, right? It can be put across as being a joke, or being lighthearted, and they're just kind of razzing you, all the way up to, if you don't, right, to where we get to the threatening point, the threatening tones.
Mm-hmm.
Do this or else. That's violent language.
Mm-hmm.
So when we don't respond to the other tactics, it tends to escalate. So again, everything has set us up. Like, I'm thinking about all of this because, again, choices. And I've had a summer of like, oh, I'm going to do this and this and that. And it didn't necessarily happen that way. And I was standing at work the other day, and somebody was like, what are you thinking about? And I was like, oh, I'm just contemplating my life choices. Like, I'm really trying to figure out how I got here, and not just in terms of career, or how I got here to this point in my life. What are the things that led to me getting here? What are the experiences? What are the choices that I made? What are the choices that I didn't make? What are the choices that were made for me?
Mm-hmm.
And so, being honest, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm really just figuring a lot of stuff out because it was taken away from me. Because I think we're all kind of born with, and maybe we're not. Maybe we're not born with any rights or any, right to make choice, because we come here and we're so dependent on somebody else. But does being dependent on somebody who, made a choice, they made a choice to bring you here and to have a family to do that, does that give them the right then to take away your choices?
Right. Yeah. I mean, when we think about it in a universal sense, absolutely not. You know, it doesn't mean you get to violate people's rights or take their rights away, or, you know, even pose the question, are we endowed with any rights? But and also I think about, you know, I think we're the only species that even need to ask that question, right?
Right.
I mean, you know, the dog doesn't say, well, I brought these puppies into the world. I guess I'd better take care of them. No,
Right.
their instinct is, this is a part of me. I'm going to nurture it, you know, grow it, teach it what to do, teach it how to function in society, teach it, you know, in animal society or whatever. You know, teach it what's dangerous, teach it how to find food so that it can then be alongside me as an equal. Right.
Right.
And so I think about that in the sense of us as human animals, we don't necessarily want our offspring beside us as equals, or even, you know, taking on the idea of leadership. That, you know, we are grooming them to be future leaders, right? You know, whereas if you look at, you know, pack animals, they know that they're grooming their young to be future leaders of the pack. They know that there are roles within the pack, or, you know, any animal relationship like that. So we're humans, which means we have egos, which means we don't instinctively groom our young to be the next leader of the pack. We don't instinctively care for them. We don't instinctively give them everything we have to give them to make sure that they survive, that they go forward and are able to move forward. So I think that's something that is worth talking about as well. Because, you know, I think as an adult now, I can say that I look at how other people parent. And you know, I've been very intentional in parenting with the things that I could control. right? There were a lot of things that were outside of my control, but with the things that I could control, I've been very intentional with those things. And I'm watching other people parent, and through the lovely courtesy of social media, we get to see both extremes of that, right? We get to see parents who are really engaged, really committed, and have a long-term vision for their children's lives. I mean, I've seen parents that are praying over their children before they're born and have, prayers all across the lifetime, and, things that they want to provide for their children all across the lifetime, all the way to the kid that, the person that beats their kid on camera to embarrass them in front of their friends and the rest of the world because of something they didn't approve of that their child did. So, I've seen both extremes of what parenting looks like. And of course, everything in between, just in life and, from social media. And so I think that question of choice, we keep getting back to that. And ideally, we want our children to feel respected by us and to respect us, but we may not be making choices that would get that result.
Right. So, okay, I'm getting feedback. Let's try that again. Okay. So that's exactly what I was going to go to. We've seen these examples in real time, like we've experienced that together. Watching how different people parent, and the parents who show up and are willing to give everything that they can think of, right, from their own experiences, from, oh, I'm an adult and these are the adult tools that I know that you're going to need, and watching them, be confident in when their children go out, they're going to knowing, okay, you're going to go out, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to do what you're going to do, and I'm not going to have any control over that. And I'm okay with it because I know that I gave you the skills. I know that I spent the time teaching and reinforcing, certain habits, or, certain practices or certain values. So I know that you have that. Now, whatever you choose to do with that once you are out on your own is your choice. And I don't have to feel any, responsibility or accountability for that, because I know that I did my best. I know that I gave you everything, versus the parents who are just kind of like, this is what I'll say about that. When I was younger, we were not allowed to say that we were being raised, because you raise corn and you rear children. And so that for me, like, stuck. And so it was like, we can tell the difference between children who are being raised and children who are being reared. The ones who are just, you feed them and you let them grow, and the ones who you're spending time with and cultivating relationship with. And, seeing that in real time, we know what that looks like on the adult side and when they, come out. But part of that is very much about choice and being attentive and figuring out who that individual is. Mm-hmm. Because they are a child. They are a child that came through you, but they are not your child. They are not your possession. They are not your opportunity to live vicariously. They are not your opportunity to, fill in a gap or a void, or, complete something that you didn't complete, or any of those things. And so
they're not your ego.
So when I think about this choice thing, I'm like, we really have to go back to that part. And, when did we first experience our choice being given back to us? Mm-hmm. And what did that look like? So I know we're approaching the end of our hour. We keep like psychology hours. We're like 55 minutes and done. Like, that's it.
Well, like, on a serious note, like, that's how I've learned to work in a when I say work, in a safe, sane, and sober way. Like, that's what I've learned. Like, 45 minutes of work, 15 minutes to rest, recalibrate, get water, get fresh air before you sit down for the next hour of work. So absolutely. Yeah.
So we're there. And I think that we probably have at least another round of choice to talk about, because I think we've really just gotten back down to choice at a foundational level
Mm-hmm.
of, recognizing that we have not always had choice.
Mm-hmm.
So some choices were made for us. Some choices we've been able to make for ourselves. But when did we first experience choice? That's the question I'd like to pose for our journal entry.
I'm
When did you first experience choice? And what did that look like? Because that helps us to pinpoint when we started getting the grooming for being able to choose, right? What our boundaries were, you know, was it a big choice or a small choice? Even in being given a choice, was that choice guided by any type of resistance? Like I'm thinking probably my first choice had something to do with what did I want to wear, and it was probably a Garanimal outfit. And I'm almost 100% positive I got pushback from Gigi, and my dad was like, if that's what she want to wear, like that's what she want to wear. So thinking about all of those things, the question that I would like to pose for this week is, what is your earliest memory of being given choice, and what did that look like?
I love it. So yeah, we'll see that journal prompt up on Purple Hair and Converse Instagram, as well as on the Lux Libra Instagram.
As well as on the Make You Media Instagram. Because did y'all know Make You Media has an Instagram?
We have to do an introduction for Make You Media. Like, we haven't even done that. So we'll do that.
We're working on it.
Yeah, we'll do that as well, so people know who we are together, so they don't have to go Purple Hair and Converse and the Lux Libra and make this long title. Like, together we are Make You Media. And yes, that is exactly what we do. So yeah, thank you everybody for joining us. This has been a soothing conversation for me because I've really wanted to talk about this and I've missed you.
Missed you too.
I wanted to, be able to have this conversation, and I definitely think there's so much more room for us to continue that. So next week we're going to look for those choices around the wellness wheel that we talked about last week, as well as this wonderful prompt. When did you first experience choice and what did that look like? Because I'm already going back in my mind trying to remember that. So great prompt, and we look forward to hearing your responses. So thank you from the Lux Libra for you joining us on Chat with the Aunties. Malaika, I'm handing it off to you, hon.
All right. And thank you from me, Malaika Salam, Purple Hair and Converse, your global neighborhood hope dealer. So thank y'all so much for joining us. For the people who are going to be seeing this afterwards, please make sure to comment and like and be a part of the conversation with us. It's Chat with the Aunties, so have some chat with us. Make sure that you like, make sure that you subscribe, and tell somebody, and then tell somebody to tell somebody, so we can all be in conversation together.
I love it. Thank you.
Bye, y'all. Bye.
Bye, y'all. Bye.